Our next Caverly Award recipient has been a math teacher at Brookline High School for 17 years. Called the conscience of the math department, I am pleased to present to you Betty Strong.
No one warned me about Dominique's speech going before me, so just take this with a grain of salt. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth Ascoli and the Brookline Education Foundation, Andrew Bott, Anthony Meyer, but mostly a big heartfelt thank you to Lisa Rodriguez Maldonado and all of my other colleagues who nominated me and wrote those letters on my behalf. I love coming to work each day, and one reason is because I get to work with you all. I must also thank my husband, Jim Rumreich, and my kids, Frankie and Bonnie. I love you so much. They're making faces at me. And sometimes I honestly don't know how you put up with school year mommy. It is hard to find the words to express the honor that I feel and the humility with which I accept this award and share the spotlight with Dominique. I must admit I suffer a bit of winner's guilt. Each year when springtime nears, I wonder which of my talented and all-around amazing colleagues at BHS will win this award, and the list is long. And I'm still reeling from this recognition of being part of that list. When my headmaster, the superintendent, and my boss, and my colleagues and other official-looking people filed into my E-Block class before April vacation, my first reaction was, "What are you thinking?" Certainly someone has warned Anthony that on your walkabouts with the superintendent, you do not go to Miss Strong's E-Block class. More on these darlings later. They stood there for an awkwardly long time, watching me fiddle with cables, preparing to video stream an assembly from the auditorium. Finally, Andrew Bott interrupted to share the exciting news. I promptly turned red in disbelief, totally overwhelmed. My students were heard whispering, "I bet she won because of us." And yeah, she really puts up with a lot. Then Andrew Bott's words with a smile, "And you'll have the opportunity to give a speech at our Celebrating Teachers event in May." Ah. I know this may sound surprising, given that I spend hours each day speaking in front of 80-plus teenagers, but I am not one for public speaking. I was an honor roll student all through high school, and the only failing grade I ever received was the 0 I took on the 10th grade English speech assignment. My teacher was totally shocked, but I had done the math. I would still get a B. My parents would never know. At this point in my adult life, I know that with the discomfort of a proper challenge comes growth. So I buckled down, I printed out and read as many Caverly speeches as I could find. In hindsight, that may have been a mistake, though. Do you know how many writing teachers have won this thing? They set a pretty high bar. And then in the halls, every congratulations from a colleague, inevitably followed by, "How's your speech coming?" Wink. But just breathe, Betty. Elizabeth Ascoli gave me some good advice. Keep it true to you and your beliefs, share your journey, and that's what the TED Talk I watched said too. So here we go. I owe my deepest held values and strength of character to my mom and dad. They instilled in me and my siblings the importance of education and just plain old hard work. My dad was an engineer. I remember when he taught me to play cribbage before I could add fluently. There were tears shed over whether 9 + 7 = 15. I don't know if any of you know cribbage or not. Or the time he tried to teach me algebra when I was in the 4th grade. In frustration, I screamed, "How can X be a number?" He would just chuckle calmly and ease up. My dad, who is now 91, just finished writing a book about his universal theory of gravity. From him, I get a fierce intellectual curiosity, a quiet fortitude, a love of nature, and a sense of contentment. My mom did not go to college, nor did she have a positive experience going to school when she was young. She was my dad's secretary when he was teaching college, and later she taught kids at the YMCA as the swim director. She found joy teaching the swim class of kids with Down syndrome, or the Adults Afraid of Water group. I know my mom felt a kindredness with those folks, and from her, I got a drive to help those who need it most. And also my too loud laugh. I've been teaching for 20 years now. In the beginning, it was all about survival. My first gig was at Dorchester High School, 20 years ago, Dorchester High School. I was pulled from my student teaching in October, actually, and offered a paying job to fill a vacancy. I was ill-equipped to deal with the challenges that I faced there. Some students were eager to learn, but some only showed up once a week, and some were oppositional and aggressive. I had no official mentor. I felt totally isolated. I floundered badly. A few veteran teachers took pity on me and offered materials and encouragement and rides home. I chipped away at bonding with individual students in my classroom. During February break that year, I became quite ill. You know, the sickness you get your first year of teaching from the germs before you have your teacher immunity. And I stayed home a full extra week. When I returned, my students exclaimed, "We thought you weren't coming back, Mr. Hong." I realized they were used to being given up on and left. The rest of the year was an upswing. By June, I was eager to start again the following September, but I was pink-slipped as a first-year teacher in Boston. My principal assured me he would get me back, but August came and I heard nothing. 2 weeks into September, they called, but it was too late. I'd been lucky enough to find a job at another high school at the end of the summer, Arlington High School, where I stayed for 2 years. The calmer environment there allowed me to really work on the fundamentals of my teaching practice, establishing routines, building rapport, designing the perfect worksheet, math lectures sprinkled with jokes. At Arlington, I also discovered the Interactive Math Project, or IMP. This is a curriculum that had everything I learned in grad school represented great math teaching. Students at the center, working cooperatively to construct knowledge through guided inquiry. It was more like coaching than teaching, and boy, was it fun. But something was still missing for me at Arlington. I was alone in the school after 2:30. I missed my Boston kids. After teaching for 3 years, I wanted to look for what I wanted in my forever school: diversity, collaboration, and IMP. I started sending out letters and making calls. And that's how I came to Brookline. It was love at first sight. I was asked in my interview, "What's so great about math anyways?" I thought that was the greatest question ever. I was ecstatic to receive an offer, and in my first summer year here, I attended a math and technology conference with some of my colleagues as part of a grant from the Brookline Education Foundation. Amazing. This is a very special place. I knew I was home. I blossomed at Brookline High School, teaching the underachievers and math phobic, who I'm most dedicated to, and teaching IMP, all in an environment founded on respect, freedom, innovation, collaboration, with ample resources. After teaching for 7 years, I felt confident, skilled, like I had arrived at good teaching. In 2004, I gave birth to my son, Frankie. And a few years later, along came Bonnie. And during those early years of parenthood, I struggled to manage my time and my energy and my sanity. Luckily, though, I had this teaching thing down, so I could just kind of back float for a while. I might consider how to reframe a lesson or where I could introduce a meaty discussion question, but there was no longer that burning passion or explosive growth in my practice of the early years. I settled into this feeling of good enough. The easy pace of small tinkerings felt good. It occurred to me that if this was all there was for the rest of my career, I might be okay with that. But it wasn't. Frankie started kindergarten. I sweated those first few months, and then we met with his teacher, Andrea Beezer, who sat across the table and looked us in the eyes and said, "I get Frankie." I exhaled. I think I cried. I felt firsthand the weight of a parent's hopes and dreams. And it dawned on me that the students in front of me aren't just teenagers. They are other people's children. It changed everything for me. I never again wielded sarcasm as a classroom management tool. I approach every parent with the absolute knowledge that they want the best for their child. Instead of fearing parent communication, I came to honor it. In parent exchanges, my tone went from businesslike, maybe even defensive, to supportive, inviting a two-way dialogue. I wanted to go back and apologize to all of the parents of my previous students. "I'm so sorry," I would say. "I just didn't know." This was hugely satisfying to link parenting knowledge to my work, and so my practice grew. Turns out I wasn't done. When my daughter turned 3, I signed up for yoga, a little me time for mommy. I was not looking for professional development. I was just looking for 90 minutes of peace and quiet. But I could not ignore the parallels of my yoga class to my own teaching practice. My yoga teacher not only models great expertise in the nuanced craft of teaching, but she also reminds me weekly of what's important. Ideas like awareness, intentionality, acceptance without judgment, letting go of perfect, kindness, gratitude. A door was opened for me, and my practice expanded. In my classroom, letting go of judgment and perfection has been transformative. I had not realized the burden that judgment and perfection and their restriction and how they restricted me and my students' progress. Now I work on taking what my students offer me in each moment during class like it is a gift. I know the content of my lessons like the back of my hand, but my brain is no longer solely focused on what time is it? How's this lesson going? Are my students doing exactly what I had envisioned? I'm noticing and listening. I let my students teach me what they need. I'm explicitly grateful to my students for mistakes that they make and questions that they ask. I value that more than a quick right answer. There's a quote that I love. It's a gift to be able to make good mistakes. It's harder than you'd think to make mistakes that lead to something new. In 2011, Grace Wang and I received a grant from the 21st Century Fund to develop a new senior math course called Perspectives of a Mathematical Mind. We spent a summer in nerd heaven, reading, researching, developing our curriculum. We set out to reveal the beauty of math by exploring non-traditional topics and to seed these young adults, who would be our students, with a personal connection to math and a positive mindset about math to take into their future with them. Designing and teaching a non-leveled, non-standards-based course is totally freeing. Our curriculum is flexible, open-ended, filled with student choice. The math we study is based only a little bit on traditional high school math, and it levels the playing field. After our first year, I went into my boss with an eye-opening observation. You know, if you come into my class, you'd have trouble identifying which level students come from. Now, after 20 years of teaching, my mind is busy with big ideas. The achievement gap is on my mind, race, class, status. I have more questions than answers. How do I offer space and time for my students to make sense of math in an individual and lasting way, while adhering to state-prescribed grade-level standards, long checklists of content, and standardized tests? How do I corral and lift up my underachieving students? How do I foster a positive identity in my classroom each day? So many of my students' lives is outside of my control. How do I affect change in the 60 minutes that I have with them each day? Which common math teaching institutions that I take for granted may act as a wedge in the achievement gap? I cannot look at racially disparate class enrollments and believe we've done everything we can. How do I support new teachers on their journey, wherever they may be? Allow them space to learn from their own good mistakes. What can I learn from them? These puzzles are my passion. If this was easy, I would have gotten bored a long time ago. Okay, at this point, I'm afraid I may have led you to believe that my classroom is some kind of Zen mountaintop pinnacle of great teaching, and that I am some magical Mary Poppins, Miss Frizzle character. Yet the stress, the challenge that they bring pushes me to be more patient, more calm, more determined than they are. I exhausted my classroom management toolkit with them very early on. By November, I truly believed I could not go on day-to-day dealing with this class. Well, it's fourth quarter. We all still show up every day. My students are not always compliant. They are definitely not quiet. And at any given moment, maybe 80% of them are seated. I frequently feel like a failure, yet somehow we have learned, shared some laughs, bonded into a somewhat crazy, dysfunctional family. I could not have made it to this point in the year without extensive, hands-on support from my boss, many deans, parents, and my colleagues. Even in my 20th year, I needed help. There is no perfect in teaching. Perfection is a false goal. Just because there's room for growth doesn't mean not good enough now. And there's no fast forward button. Each of us must just keep on moving forward in our journey to grow. We must hold each other up as we go. Teaching is not meant to be a solitary journey. Sometimes you'll see a clear path that you need to follow. You may need to stop and rest at times. And when you think you've reached your destination, that pinnacle of good teaching, keep looking. More doors will open. There will be many guideposts, mentors, and paths revealed along the way. We just have to be open to seeing them. Thank you again for this great award.